Can we use Taoism to bring ourselves and our network more balance and effectiveness? It's worth considering. Let's start by getting on the same page. Taoism emerged in China about 2,500 years ago, and while it has some overlap with its contemporary of Confucianism, such as seeking a harmonious existence, it focuses not on human social institutions and routines, but on individuals and adaptability.
Taoism believes in letting things work to their perfection naturally, to support their natural state.
At its core, Taoism advocates an alignment with the Tao, which is translated as the way, or the path, and which some liken to Mother Nature, or ultimate reality. So how does this relate to Dash? Consider Ali, who was born in Pakistan, now works in Abu Dhabi, and wants to send money home to his family. Traditional payment channels would require Ali to fill out paperwork, operate within the limits decreed by strangers, pay middlemen a percentage, relinquish control over the funds, and would take days to clear. The new route involving Dash would require none of that, just a very slight transaction fee. Which of these routes is rife with arbitrary barriers, and which is as seamless as possible? With Dash, we are creating a tool that facilitates voluntary exchange. Our aim is to remove friction, akin to the flow of water. You see, water is often pointed to in Taoism due to its inherent qualities.
The characteristics of water are softness and humility.
As this applies to Dash, the more accessible and welcoming is our community, our decision-making processes, and our DFOs, the more agile we'll be. And Taoism looks not just to water to glean lessons, but water in a river.
Life is like the course of a river, and most of us are clinging to the bank. At a certain point, each of us must be willing to simply let go and trust the river to carry us along safely.
I'd argue that clinging to the bank is trying to appease those aligned with the legacy financial system. It's a lot of work to try to live according to the wishes of someone else, and ultimately, it's counterproductive. Better to let go of the past and of the future, and focus on this moment. We cannot control all the variables of what's happening around us, but we can act thoughtfully.
The person swimming against the river, you see, does not by his action express the force of the river. The person swimming with it, he goes along and he has that whole river behind him, but he's subtly directing it, because you can change direction in the course of the river. You can go to the left or to the right, as a ship can use a rudder.
By proactively using organizational models that are resistant to getting snagged, we can proceed more smoothly. In other words, if there's no fixed target to target, we cannot be targeted. Dash can exist in such a fluid state that it can flow around any obstacles. Another concept of Taoism is Wu Wei, which translates to non-action or effortless action. This does not mean to be lazy, but to incorporate a dose of non-action before executing. Carl Gustav Jung said, "It is characteristic of the Western mind that it has no concept for Tao." He said this because the Western culture predominantly focuses on acting. But for harmony and sustainability, and to act purposefully and intelligently, the Tao suggests that one must combine action with non-action. This is epitomized in the well-known yin-yang, which symbolizes opposite but interconnected, mutually perpetuating forces. Roughly speaking, yang is aggressive, action-oriented, and rigid, whereas yin is receptive, involves non-action, and flexible. The Federal Reserve Note is very much housed in the yang camp. It seeks to have a monopoly on the status of global medium of exchange. To advance those aims, it ultimately relies on the military might of the United States regime. At Dash, we do hope to gain a much larger adoption, but we use voluntary means. Rather than attempt to crowd out competition with force, we must operate in a way that naturally and actually brings value to users. Taoism's most important work is the Tao Te Ching. After the Bible, it is the most translated book in the world. For example, this chart shows just some of the translations of Taoism's 3 preeminent virtues. Let's apply these to Dash. Compassion or love. We are building a tool not to control, but to empower. Frugality or simplicity. We aim for a tool that is streamlined and works. Humility or modesty. We are open to ideas. This view was demonstrated recently by Incubator strategist Mikhail.
I'm receiving a lot of feedbacks from the community, like I'm watching the Discord, I'm watching the Dash forums constantly.
Mikhail acknowledged that his efforts are made stronger when others help to identify needed fixes or suggest new tools or functionality. This is much more inspiring and effective than someone who is cold and purports to alone have all the answers. It shows that order is emergent and spontaneous, rather than top-down and fixed. Overall, there's much wisdom in Taoism for us individually and for our joint efforts in Dash. I'd encourage each of us to step back from time to engage in some non-action, appraise where we're at and where we want to go, to not sink or get stuck in the muck, but to act effectively and to remain in the flow.
Well, hello. Do we have enough DAO in our DAO? That is what I would like to know.
I guess we can always build towards that. Yeah.
More DAO in the DAO. So, hello, first of all, our guest today, AJ. How's it going, dare I ask?
Is it not going well? What? No, things are good. I think,
Good.
maybe.
Glad to catch you in a good mood. I hope I.
Oh, okay. Is my mood good? Oh, okay. Yeah,
Right,
my
right,
mood's
right.
all right today. I'm not
Good.
a Grumposaurus today.
Good.
Right now,
Excellent.
in this moment.
Good. So today we are talking about something that is abstract at the time, but of course would be concrete should we go forward with it, which is basically assigning an entirely new task to the Masternode network. Is that right? I'm just going to let y'all take it from there.
Yeah, let me set up the motivation for this topic and this discussion. I think if we step back and think about what are we trying to accomplish here in Dash, I think we're all on the same page that Dash is supposed to be digital cash. This is one of the best things about Dash is the name digital cash. It's seared, branded right into the name that this is the purpose of this project is to become digital cash. And as such, every kind of digital cash that I know, any kind of cash system or capital system where there's a monetary unit involved, also has a labor component where there's the monetary side and then there's the labor side, and it's the marriage of those two that make a sustainable economy. And the labor side is supposed to build goods and services that the capital is, exchanged for. So it doesn't make any sense to have a monetary unit where that monetary unit is just, you just hold it and sit on it and have it as savings. It needs to circulate in the economy in exchange for goods and services. And so
Ryan, are you saying that it's not enough to just say that Dash is digital cash and have that be it? And actually, ironically, making a declaration that something is money actually is the definition of fiat. Fiat means by decree. So
right.
Can we not just say
decree.
Dash is digital cash and that's it?
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying we cannot do that. So that's actually, it's on the one hand, it's one of our strengths that we have digital cash seared into our brand. But on the other hand, we tend to think that, we'll just claim that we're digital cash and then the people will start coming. But that is not the case. We actually have to have this other side of the coin, which is the labor force to create the goods and services that this monetary unit exchanges for. And so if we then step back again and look at what we've been doing for the past 8 years, Dash Core Group has embarked on a good project that is trying to create one of those services, goods and services, which is essentially a decentralized database. And that the idea there is saying, we're going to create this decentralized database, and we hope that there's a market that will want to exchange Dash for this service of a decentralized database to host data. And that is actually a step in the right direction, because before that, we were just kind of building the digital cash system without creating a complementary good or service. And so this idea of creating goods and services in exchange for the monetary unit, Dash in this case, is good. And I think that we need to do a lot more of that. So the question is, what kinds of goods and services should we be producing as one of our main, I'll call it exports, to use a term that, that AJ actually kind of coined for me. And I like this concept of Dash needs exports. In other words, goods and services that we create as a community that we hope other people will then demand our monetary unit for to get those goods and services. And today's topic is introducing another one of those goods and services that we could potentially pursue that we hope people will want in exchange for our monetary unit. And so that good or service in today's topic is a decentralized hosting service. So instead of the database that we're all familiar with platform and evolution, I think that there is a big market demand for hosting websites in a way that, similar to Evolution's database, is decentralized. And we'll talk a little bit more about what decentralized means, but that's just the introduction of like the motivation. Another part of this is Chad Barraford of the Thorchain project has recently come out and said that he is pursuing a side project where they're going to try to be decentralizing front ends, and that means hosting service that can provide user interfaces to end consumers on their browsers. And I think that that's a great idea. It's actually something that AJ and I have talked about over the years, like probably 2 years now, AJ, of just having services that the Masternode network can perform in exchange for Dash, and that would be an export that would create demand for our monetary unit.
So you're saying that Thorchain is already talking about hosting websites on their network? Like we've already been beaten to the punch in a way?
Well, no, not Thorchain itself, because Thorchain has a specific, they're doing a specific thing, but I'm saying Chad Barraford, the guy who started Thorchain, one of them, has this as a separate idea. So yeah, I mean, like I said, AJ and I have discussed this idea for years, and we even actually reached out to one of the most prominent web hosting web servers, and we got him to change part of his code to facilitate being hosted on masternodes and exchanging. I can't remember exactly what we did. This is probably a year and a half ago. AJ, do you remember what we had him do? Because we were thinking about this back then. It's only now that I'm bringing it up again because I feel like there are a few of us in this community that have recognized that this would be an interesting service to provide. And so maybe now is the time to actually pursue it more seriously.
Yeah, there was at least two pieces to it. One piece was investigating gRPC, because gRPC is not really a standard internet protocol, but that's what platform uses. And I think it was gRPC. It was one of those, or maybe it was protobuf, or I don't know. It's one of those kind of niche protocols that's used at like enterprise for inter server communication, like what Google uses. And he had a proxy layer that could work with it, and I don't remember what the result of that one was, or if that came to fruition, because I think that was a bit more work. The much simpler thing was, so if we use domain names are already decentralized, and you can easily update. You can switch physical servers or switch hosting providers, or switch lots of things around and just reassign one or more domain names to that physical or virtualized server. And he implemented an update mechanism that actually went all the way through, so that essentially we would be able to automate the process of having masternodes be able to sorry, I'm actually having a hard time remembering the details and how to explain
it's been
it
a while.
But
when you say automate the process, so he did something on his end that you're saying would make all of the websites that his setup hosts livable on masternodes. So then would masternodes need to do much of anything on their end?
Yeah, so there's a bug where rather than using the correct system call to resolve an address, it is constrained to an IP address rather than being able to use a normal address. And that one bug, I estimate, would be a very simple fix in of itself, but then it would have to be deployed. So this is on two pieces. One, inside of the Dash node, the resolution mechanism is using the wrong system call. So it is constrained to only be able to get IP addresses rather than normal addresses. And then the way that the addresses are published presently in the ProRes TX, that also needs to be fixed so that it is not artificially limiting web addresses from being used. But with those are very, very minor fixes. Deploying it is an issue, but the fix is trivial.
Yeah, and sorry, I didn't mean to jump us right down into this implementation rabbit hole. I want to actually step back again and talk about a little bit more about the motivation here. As we know, like cryptocurrencies, we aim to have these be decentralized, and projects like Thorchain, like Maya, that is a decentralized backend service for swapping coins, for example. And that's great and everything, but the question always becomes, what about the front ends? What about the actual websites where people are interfacing with the users? If those are shut down, then what do we do? Even if our backend is decentralized and permissionless and uncensorable, what happens when somebody just comes in and says, oh, hey, Mr. Eldorado.market, you need to shut down your website because it's performing this service. And AJ, we can talk about like how those phone calls and emails happen, but essentially somebody can get a phone call, like the person hosting your website, like your service provider. I don't know all these terms specifically very well, but Eldorado.market, for example, I'll just use this as an example because it's a front end that is centralized, accessing a decentralized backend. But somebody like Eldorado.market, they're hosting somewhere. Like that website is hosted somewhere, and like that, maybe that's a cloud service like AWS or Netlify or Next.js or something like that, and they could get a call from an authority that says, "Hey, you need to shut this guy's website down." Am I explaining that accurately, AJ? Can this kind of thing happen, and has this happened, and how exactly does that work? Because this is the problem that we're trying to solve, is we want both the back ends and the front ends decentralized so that these are permissionless and uncensorable services.
Yeah, so you can only be uncensorable to, well, you have to balance with convenience, right? Like if I don't want anyone to have my dollar bill, I can burn it and then no one can have it, but I also can't use it. That's very inconvenient. So there's a balance between being censorship resistant and being convenient in a way that somebody could actually use it, and then being censorship proof, but potentially in a way that no one can actually get value out of it. It becomes a dark web only type of thing. And the types of phone calls, it's not typically phone calls. They don't care enough. They just send you emails, but you get an email from a legal team or a cyber security threat team or whatever that says, hey, take down this thing. And that really comes down to countries' policies and extradition laws. So if we're talking about, I will use an alternative term to prevent the transcript censorship. Fans of the playground prawn, child prawn, that's our, every country in the world is pretty much against fans of the playground. And so that stuff, if you publish it on an uncensorable medium, it's probably still going to get censored anyway. But if it's something like around copyright law or around political speech or around use of cryptocurrency, that's going to vary from country to country. So as long as you're hosted somewhere that allows that, as long as you have one of your hosts is somewhere that allows that, then you can be free to participate in that. However, that doesn't mean that a country won't be able to block it internally, like what China does, and to some extent what the United States does. So there's kind of levers you can pull, and you kind of like, if you're in fans of the playground territory, I don't think that there's really much of anything that is going to help you to be uncensorable. If you're in political speech territory, then there's a lot of levers you can pull and be uncensorable to some effect.
Yeah, well, I think money is one of those things that is going to be, if well, it already is. It's one of those things that's politically very dicey, where there are certain jurisdictions that are going to want to shut this whole ecosystem down, and so that's kind of what we're trying to mitigate.
Okay.
Now,
if I can interject here, my first thought when hearing all of this is, okay, if someone shuts Eldorado down, I'm already aware of at least 2 other interfaces I could use. And I heard of just an additional one, a third one this morning. And so, hey, just like exists today in regular Web 2, if one of my favorite, torrent websites or whatever gets shut down, I just go to the next one. It's not that big a deal. But of course, as you're saying, it takes a special sort of piratey, techie, mostly highly motivated person to jump through all these hoops to find the website they're looking for. And so, assuming that we are looking to appeal to everyone, which we are, what would someone's motivation be to host a front end on the Dash network if they can pay for it in an easy, centralized way?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, because I actually don't want this to be primarily about censorship resistance, because if certain jurisdictions want to shut this industry down, that is going to have to be something that we fight on the political level to some degree, because normal people, they're not going to enlist in that fight, so they'll just give up. But I wanted to say that this is also something that it's not just about censorship resistance, it's about convenience as well. So this service that we're talking about with decentralized or even somewhat centralized, but still provided by the Masternode network, this service is, in addition to trying to become more censorship resistant, it's also something that just hopefully will be more convenient for somebody to be able to, like, say I'm an amateur web developer, and I want to spin up a website. I want to create a website, and I do all of my development work. I create my HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then I want to host that somewhere under a domain, and I just want it done like very easily, and I'm willing to, let's say, pay with a digital currency. Could be Dash, could be anything. Really, but I just want it to be, it's a strictly convenience play. I don't think that exists in the market right now. I think that pretty much anytime, if I'm a web developer and I want to host a website, I have to interface with some big corporation like Netlify or AWS or Next.js, what's that company, the Vercel. I have to interface with one of these providers, and I have to, pull out a credit card and pay for my hosting using a credit card. And it's just, I have to sign up, I have to register for their website. And then on top of that, I have to worry about, like, if I have a controversial website, I have to worry about them shutting my service down. So it's both inconvenient and potential hazard. So I want to solve the convenience part as well, where I, as the web developer, I just want to have my files. I got my HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and I just want to click a button and say, upload this and host this using the Dash Masternode network, and I will pay. I'll send this payment, whether it's monthly or if it's a one-time payment or whatever. I want to send this payment, and then bam, it's done, and I can just walk away, and I don't have to pull out a credit card and register for a company and work through a user interface. So that's kind of the motivation here is I want to solve the convenience problem for the developers of websites as well. And then when we couple that with the fact that if somebody needs data for their website, then they can also use Platform for the data storage, and then they can use this service that we're talking about for the website website hosting. You know, that can make it really easy to where even amateur web developers that know nothing about like DevOps, you know, developer operations stuff, they can get their website up, host the data on Dash Platform, and then host the website itself on Dash as well, the Dash network. And we don't have all these, we don't have all of the technicals worked out about how this is going to happen, but I do have this expert right here out to my right, AJ, who is really a domain expert in this area. And if we want this service in Dash, we can have it. We just have to build it. And I think it will be, AJ, tell me if I'm wrong, but will this take 8 years to build, or will this take 8 weeks of concentrated effort?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is concentrated effort, right? So yeah, this would be in the realm of 8 weeks of concentrated effort for sure. But so here's kind of the process, right? The internet has multiple stacks in it. And what we'd want to do is take advantage of the maximum convenience of those stacks and the maximum decentralization of those stacks, right? So that the thing that's the
stacks, what do you mean?
So I'll say, so for example, the IP system is the most centralized system that is part of the internet, meaning that there's the least flexibility. You get an IP address from an ISP that physically runs a cable to your house or physically runs a cable to the data center that you're renting from, right? So that thing is the least decentralized. If you're in a data center that has multiple ISPs, then potentially you could have multiple IP addresses from different ISPs and be decentralized that way. But like that's the bottom layer. IP is like the phone number of the server. And that's that, you know, just like in your contact list, you don't type in somebody's name, you just tap their, I mean, don't type in somebody's phone number, you just tap their name. You probably don't even know the phone numbers of your friends or coworkers anymore. You just tap their name, and then under the hood, it resolves that name to a phone number. It dials the phone number. You never see the phone number. It shows on the phone the entire time the name of the person. That IP address is like that. It's the base layer that actually does the communication that is very difficult to change, just like a phone number. You can't change your phone number easily. You know, you can buy a burner phone, but you can't just like swap your phone number willy-nilly. If, you know, Verizon decides to block your phone, you can't within a few seconds be on another network, right? So
so what stack would Dash come into play? Like at what point of the stack that you're referencing?
Every point.
Every point.
Well, in order to be decentralized, you have to take advantage of each layer of the system. So you don't want to be constrained by any of the detriments of any particular layer. You want to take advantage of every layer. So for example, at the user level, we want people to be able to operate with a browser, a web browser, right? And there are constraints that you have to stay in line with if you want people to operate in a web browser. That means you're not doing dark web stuff. You're not doing Tor. You're not doing like multiple layers of indirection through VPNs and stuff like that. Like there has to be an access layer that is clean and simple that a person can access.
And so you don't need to install any extensions or anything like that.
Yeah, you wouldn't need to install. It's kind of a non-starter if people have to install special software. That's not going to attract users, right? So you have to say, okay, the dark layer, the dark web is a layer that we're not targeting. That could be added later. That could be a different program, whatever. But we're trying to operate at the level of the browser. So the decentralization of the name system is both by country, by organization, and by international committee. So there's 3 different things you can kind of subscribe to there. So if you want .com, that is pretty much internationally owned at this point. Barack Obama gave up the United States rights to it. Now it is owned by the world. And if you want .us, that is owned by the United States. If you want .uk, that is owned by the United Kingdom. If you want dot, DJ, that's owned by Djibouti. Actually, I think they sold it to a private party. But anyway, so all the 2-letter domains, those are country accessible. So if you know of a country that has the political favoring and freedom that you like, then you can get a domain in that country and you're protected by that country's laws. So in this case, I would say, and then there's the organizational domains, like .app is owned by Google. .gay is owned by Donut Domains. .republican is owned by a left-wing organization. .gop is owned by a right-wing organization. So like, regardless of what the name says, you have to go find out what the charter of the name is to find out what its political leanings are, because some of them have things that, like, for example, there might be, I would imagine this is true for the charter of .gay. .gay probably has a thing that says you're not allowed to use hate speech for anything that has .gay. So if you wanted to make my website .gay and you said something unfavorable or politically incorrect about some sort of minority group, whether it was related to gay or not related to gay, whatever, it's likely that the organization that owns .gay would censor you.
So then are we talking about getting a .dash system, or are we talking about giving a ring-a-ding-ding to Djibouti and being like, hey, we want to integrate with your domain?
So the answer is both. Because in the beginning, what makes a lot of smart sense to do is to have a .com, have a I think CH is Switzerland. I don't remember what theirs is off the top of my head, but have, like, a Switzerland domain and have a politically neutral domain. In fact, I've read the charter of several top-level domains, and .gop is ironically one of the most explicitly liberal and unpolitical top-level domains, because they say in their charter, we do not restrict the use of this for any particular political party or purpose. We expect that people who are members of the GOP will want to use it, but because we value freedom, we do not restrict any use by any political party or otherwise for any purpose. So they explicitly in their charter say this is essentially a quote unquote, well, not quote unquote, because they don't use that word, but this is like an open source top level domain. .com is also close to that. .com is not explicitly anybody may use this for any purpose, regardless of political affiliation, but it's implicitly that way. It wasn't started that way.
I had no idea that web extensions were censorable from a way, I guess, that you've just described. I certainly had never heard of a charter of web domains. So that's all very interesting. So then, given all this knowledge, like, what is the path forward that you see for Dash specifically, AJ?
Well, in the beginning, we just use domains that we are comfortable with and that our users are comfortable with, or our users can choose for themselves. That's what makes it decentralized, right? If you don't like the policy of .red, then and you like the policy of .dev, then you can choose to switch, right? That's what makes it decentralized.
We could host whichever one we want. We could host whichever
and
we want.
And the people, so again, it's at multiple layers, right? So we as Dash can provide a couple of domains. We could provide a dash.dev, a dash.com, and a dash.ch, right? We could provide all those things. And people that wanted to use the service that don't care about managing it themselves could just choose one of those when they deploy. So it would be example site 123.dash.dev, for example, right? And so that's one layer, and that's a layer where they can either say, I don't want to control it, you control it, or they say, I want to control it, and I just want to publish it and allow you to use it. So it can go either way. The authority can go every way. It's extremely decentralized. You're not stuck in a box in any way. You have so many options, so many choices. Everything works together. Everything plays well. If you have a political message that is not appropriate for one particular country or host or whatever, you just pick the one that works for you, right? So that's at one layer. Now, in the future, 5 years in the future, we literally could get .dash, and we could have a charter that is an open source type charter or a free speech maximalist charter, right? But that costs to get started, to make the bid. It costs $250,000 plus you have to have a history of income as a registrar. So so basically we'd have to run the system for a couple of years before we were eligible to purchase at that top level to get a .dash. So let's put that aside for now. But the point is that there's lots of options. It can either be selected by the user, the person who's paying, or it can be appointed by the Dash network. It can go either way. So maximum decentralization. And then in other layers of...
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, I never heard of any of this. So thanks for sharing. And also what you're saying, AJ, is reminding me of something Ryan Taylor said years ago. He was the former CEO of Dash Core Group, and he was in the process of analyzing how not new currencies, but how new payment methods take hold in any given way. And he was analyzing PayPal in particular. And he said the absolute crucial thing for them was to get added to a closed market system. In this case, it was eBay. And just for the users of eBay, and only that, because there were enough users of eBay, they were able to launch PayPal to become, PayPal is now usable for so many more markets. And so what you're describing is saying, let's maybe just pick a market. That in this case, maybe like a country whose policies are most favorable to Dash, or, our users would have the option to pick a country whose policies are most favorable to Dash. And that could sort of maybe kind of act like the eBay, where it's like this incubator space where Dash gets a chance to finally become circular in one market.
I don't have a comment on that. I haven't thought about it in that way. But it's unconstrained. So no matter if we for the Dash Masternode hosting pick something, users can pick something else. They're not constrained. There's just some levers to pull that will happen in the software that will be pretty much automatic, right? But the next layer after that is that people need to be able to choose where something gets hosted. There needs to be an agreement, right? Like I need to agree that I want to host your stuff for exchange of value. It needs to be a marketplace, right? And then you need to agree that you want to purchase hosting from me. And the IP system tells us the physical location of any particular masternode, right? So every masternode, the IP address, and hopefully soon the domain name will be listed in the POSI registry, the proof of service registry, the ProReg TX messages, right? So you can scan the blockchain and you can see every IP address of every Dash node that's ever been. And that tells you the physical location of it down to the data center or the neighborhood of where that's hosted. So if I was to host one out of my house, from the IP address, you could tell what city I'm in, potentially what neighborhood I'm in. So very, very easily what country an IP address is in. So depending on the political leanings, and I know Ryan said we don't want to focus around the censorship resistance that much, and I agree, but there's a couple of things that go into play when you would publish a front end. If one of the reasons you want it to be decentralized is for censorship resistance, it may be important to you to select particular IP addresses that you want to try to publish to on the Masternode network, because you know that IP address is in such and such a country or such a state. And
or you
so,
even know the actual operator of that specific masternode personally, for example.
Yeah, or you know them personally. Yeah. Or you know what service they're on. It's AWS, it's DigitalOcean, etc. All this stuff is public registry stuff, like basically like a phone book. So anyway, your software will it might ask you a couple of questions. Do you care about censorship resistance? Is there a particular political affiliation? I don't think we'd actually build that into the software at this point, but let's just say that was a question, right? So the software that you use to publish could just go select a couple of IP addresses and make a bid and say, hey, I'm willing to pay you a premium of, not just 50 cents, but a whole $1 for this year's worth of hosting. And because you're in a country that I favor for the content that I want to publish, obviously that the words don't go in there, but the software just goes and selects a bunch of IP addresses and makes a bid, and then that server either accepts the bid or rejects the bid. And we have the POSI band system already, so we know the reputation score of Dash masternodes, that they've been reliable. And we could basically just add another thing into the memo of the blockchain that kind of piggybacks on the POSI and the POSI band system, proof of service and proof of service ban system, so that if a node honors their commitment, then their score stays reliable, and if they don't honor their commitment, then their score becomes unreliable. So we could, for example,
and then do they just get fewer payments if the score goes down? Is it just if a payment gets skipped, or what's the actual consequence there?
So the consequence of that would be that the client, that other clients would be able to see that in the blockchain memos, like this file was published, and we can see that, that was agreed. It was published in the blockchain. That file was published. That was the file that was published. And these servers are still hosting that file. We can tell because we can do the integrity check on the file. This server, we can see it agreed to host the file, but we see it's not hosting the file. So it would just be a reputation system. Like, okay, that server was not reliable. And so it would have to lower its prices, or it would have to become more reliable, or whatever. But the software would basically say, okay, I want to see the POSI band list or the reputation score list, and I want to publish files to servers that have high reputation. And servers that have high reputation would probably cost more than servers that have low reputation. And so you just have a marketplace where if you want to spin up a masternode and you want to get money from people that are doing the hosting service, the longer you've had your masternode service running, the higher your reputation is going to be by default. And the more reliable your server has been in providing services, the higher its reputation score is going to be. So out of the network of 4,000 nodes, any bad actors would be identified pretty quickly, and people just wouldn't host files with them.
Okay, so I actually want to touch on this point a little bit, because I think a lot of people might be a little confused at this point because of our
Evo nodes versus master nodes.
Because of how we think about, Dash platform and Evo nodes, and the system is designed so that every single evolution node, every single Evo node is hosting the same data. And what you're suggesting, AJ, is we would have a system where it's not required that every single node is participating in this service provision.
That would be too expensive. It would be astronomically expensive.
Exactly. I just wanted to make that point, because people will assume in this community probably that every single node is required to run this service, but it's not. It's a voluntary opt-in system where those master nodes who opt into providing this.
Evo nodes or master nodes?
It could be either, but probably just master nodes.
Okay. At the start, because of certain bugs that are probably going to deploy live that wouldn't be able to be fixed in time, it probably couldn't run on Evo nodes.
So yeah, we would probably target just normal master nodes. So if you're a normal master node operator and you are interested in some extra income, you would opt into this service, and the service is that you're going to be hosting websites. So when somebody might ping your server and say, because some user went into their browser and typed in the URL of a website, then it hits your server and it says, hey, I need this file. And then your server serves that file to that browser. And that will require a little bit more bandwidth, not much, but a tiny bit. And then you'll start getting more payments of like Dash payments in exchange for that. So that makes Masternode operation more profitable, and it creates more demand for Dash, and that's the general idea that we're going for here.
And what I'm hearing is also a solution to some debate that's been had, or some heated debate that's been had in the past about Sam Westrich has brought it up specifically about, should the entire network have to, obviously no one has to, but people like to use these terms, be forced to host the very same data, even if they don't want to host some of that data, but they want to host other data, or not? Or should people be allowed to opt out? And so the argument for is that, hey, let's give our network operators options. Options are good, right? And the pro, or the against is, but if we don't act as like a unit, as a unified network, then some of us will have to basically take on more risk or labor or work than others. But
no, it's the opposite.
Pay. That's what I'm saying. This actually offers the incentive of pay to take on the labor that maybe not every node wants to take on, which in this case is hosting websites. Yeah.
So I believe that there was an aspirational goal for Evo nodes to be decentralized, that they would actually be able to independently serve data and the database would shard. That is, to my understanding, that is not how it's going to deploy in the initial version, which would mean that the write speed of the network is limited to the write speed of the slowest system on the network. Read speed would be potentially unbounded, but write speed, you would not know that data is committed until the slowest network on the entire node of 100 nodes or 1,000 nodes or whatever it is has finished its write. That is not a decentralized system. That is a concentrated, centralized superstructure. Decentralized systems scale in capacity. If they added sharding, it could become a decentralized system where the capacity scales as the network grows. Capacity gets bigger. If capacity gets smaller as your network grows, that's not decentralized. That is headed towards black hole disaster. And politically, no, it is absolutely absurd that everybody should host the same data, because the very first thing that is going to happen, and I know this because I have run multiple services, the very first thing that's going to happen is that people that are running bank scams, and like meaning not talking about using cryptocurrency for wire fraud, talking about hosting a web page that looks like Wells Fargo and has a login button that sends the password somewhere else. That's what I mean by bank scams. The very first thing that's going to happen is that bank scams are going to pop up, and that fans of the playground are going to put up content, because there's a diffusion of responsibility, right? So anytime you make data accessible at a cost that is more affordable than the alternative for the potential gain, which, it may be complex enough that scammers won't want to go through the hassle of figuring out how to get that content on there or whatever. But if it's very simple to get content up and it's very inexpensive, scammers, they run bots, right? So a person has to manually do labor and set something up. A scammer basically sells their bots on the black market, and then other people just buy them. And so they get this, one person does the work, everybody benefits from it. And so you have to have a mechanism in which content that is malicious can be removed. Otherwise, you literally will have the FBI potentially banging down your door, or if you're lucky, you just get an email from the police, right? And in the best case, you just get an email from your ISP. That's like copyright infringement. But when you get into bank scams, you're getting emails from the police or the FBI. And when you get into child prawn, your door might get busted down without warning, right? So you cannot just say, oh, we're going to host a system and trust people to be good, because that's not going to happen. There has to be an opt-in, and there has to be some levers that help people deal with abuse, because asking 4,000 people to take responsibility for child prawn that gets uploaded to a system is absurd.
So we're going to have to, we will be facing that challenge shortly. As soon as evolution gets up, I know that, that particular thing is obviously image based, and Dash platform is just data based. So
Hey, images are data. Base64 is a text format that images can work in.
Right. So we are going to face that challenge of like, okay, now we've got it's not going to be 4,000 because the Dash platform will just be on the, what is it now? Like just
It's like 105 or something.
Let's call it 200 in the equilibrium phase or whatever, if it ever gets to that point. 200 of our master nodes that are actually then Evo nodes will be hosting basically data that anybody wants to upload, and that data, like you said, AJ, could be images.
It's going to be passwords. It's going to be credit card numbers that are encrypted by black market people that they basically, it's just another form of them to siphon something through. It's going to be images. Yeah. If the cost, whatever the cost will bear for the type of data.
Well, somebody might just want to mess with us too, right? Like it
Oh
doesn't.
yeah. Just punking.
Like not even people messing with us.
Right. Yeah, right? Absolutely. Somebody could just be like, I want to give the middle finger. It's like that time that when somebody took down, when the whole Sam Bankman-Fried thing happened, right? Like somebody was just screwing with them. They knew a little bit about how the algorithm worked, and they made a transaction that was so large that it caused the algorithm to go into overdrive and drive the prices of their BOGO tokens to zero. Right? That wasn't a market force. That was one individual making a series of cells, high volume cells, intentionally, maliciously, to trigger their algorithm and make the price drop to zero.
Okay, yeah. So a little off topic there, but I think the point that you're making is, well, let me ask you this. Like how, with that discussion behind us now, how are you thinking of combating this kind of thing where, let's say somebody does put up a Wells Fargo with OneL.com in hopes to scam people, and they want to host it on this Dash platform, this Dash hosting service. How are we going to combat that?
Well, first of all, having dealt with multiple bank scams, people are so incredibly dumb. It's not like Wells Fargo with a single L. It's like xjk4r7.whackamole.eqmr.
Right, because it could be a link that just goes to some random looking link.
No,
somebody
people are so dumb,
and they don't look at the URL bar. They just see that it looks like Wells Fargo. Got it. So how do we combat this?
Okay, so my thinking on this, you can do one of two ways, right? Well, one of three ways. So one is you take the person's personal information, you make them verify, right? Now, people will still get hacked accounts and then spoof somebody else's information or whatever, but it lowers the barrier. It absolves you of some legal responsibility. If you get the email from the FBI, you've got some information you can send them. Now, that doesn't jive well with us as an ecosystem, right? Because we want to respect privacy. And the idea that, somebody that receives some content via EvoNode or via the system we're talking about would then have to deal with the FBI and explain themselves and try to figure out logs or something, that's not in the realm that we want to be in. We don't want to have to keep that information. We don't want to have to disclose that information. We don't want to have to be the arbiters of truth and misinformation and political sensitivity to say this is good, this is bad, whatever, in general. Right? At some level, we all have a personal moral belief. Probably for almost all of us, child prawn falls beyond the pale of our moral beliefs, right? But there's a lot of gray area, especially politically. So that's an option that we probably don't want to pursue heavily, but maybe something that we can use is some sort of identification through phone number, email, whatever. But let's put that aside because that's definitely not what we'd love to do. Another thing that we could do is we could just make our prices much more expensive. So DigitalOcean charges $5 a month for hosting. We could charge $50 a month for hosting. Anybody that wants to run a scam will run it on DigitalOcean because it's going to be easier for them to deal with the $5 a month and just find a stolen credit card and a fake email address to run it through DigitalOcean than it's going to be for them to pay the equivalent of $50 of Dash. I don't really like this because I don't think it gives us a competitive market advantage. I know that services exist that that are libertarian services and they cost more because they're libertarian, but it's not a huge driving factor. It's not going to get a bunch of people to want to come to Dash. So another method that we could use is something that everybody's already familiar with, which is the concept of staking. You send money somewhere else to be in someone else's custody so that you're arbitraging via blockchain essentially. And then if everybody fulfills their agreements and contracts, then when, basically rather than getting interest on the money, you're getting service on the money, and then when you're done with the service, you could get your money back. So let's say that the cost is $1 per year for hosting. I mean, that's just a blowout price, right? But I will have to stake $100, and I can stake that $100 for 6 months or for 10 years or whatever. But as long as I have that staked, I can get it back and I can get a low price. So I can say, okay, I'm going to host this for a year. It's only going to cost me $1 for the entire year of hosting. And when I'm done, I'm going to request my stake back. I'm going to get my stake back. I only paid $1.
And
so that's something
scam and or whatever problem, just any website that any large enough, mean enough group doesn't like, this solves that problem because the stake is, the person can lose their stake if their site creates trouble.
Yeah, so you could basically have a posy ban on the customer side, right? So if it ends up being and this is the part where I don't know how we put this on the blockchain exactly, like what the message looks like. But essentially, I, as a Masternode owner, I could look at some content and I could determine for myself, hey, this is objectionable to me. I'm going to voluntarily give you your stake back. I don't want to participate in it. Or it could be something like the FBI contacted me. Now I have to deal with them. I'm not giving your stake back, right?
Yeah. So I think, just to kind of summarize that, you're saying there are different ways that we could try to mitigate this problem, and one of them might involve some kind of staking. And the way that you're using the term is that the customers, meaning the developers who want to host a site with you with the Dash Masternodes, they would give up, say, 10 Dash or 5 Dash or something.
That's actually just collateral, right? That's not actually staking. That's collateral.
Right, and I wanted to point that out because AJ's definition of stake is a little bit different than maybe some of our listeners.
Well, it's like CrowdNode.
CrowdNode, you're giving up the Dash and then you get it back. So it's a little bit of a nuanced thing, but you could also do something similar where you're just where somebody just has to prove that they own 10 Dash, but they keep it in their custody and they say, I own 10
and
Dash.
Lock it.
And that would be a spam mitigation mechanism where, like, a spam botnet is not going to purchase 100 Dash so that they can spin up 20 websites or something like that. It'd be too cost prohibitive for them. And so this imposition of a cost is what a lot of people do to prevent spam. So that's something that we could do as well.
The service costs could be low, and the collateral or staking cost, and there's different strategies of what that collateral or staking cost could be. But the point is that you're just proving that you're wealthy enough that you're probably not a bot, because a bot probably doesn't want to put in more money for a short-term scam where the money is going to be locked up for a long time, or they have the potential to lose the money.
Right.
And we could also have some
It's more
system.
important that you're proving also that you care at least 10 dash enough about the dash network, right? Because if what you're doing stands to cause damage to the dash network, you've now just damaged the value of your collateral. So I like that side of that too.
Yeah, and it could work the same way that there's another staking system we have that I don't remember what the protocol is called for that, but CrowdNode is using it for like their V2. But there's something like that we could do as well, where like the group of servers that are hosting the content, if they, basically if they have consensus that the content was malicious, then they could just, let's say that it doesn't go to the service operator because that maybe creates a perverse incentive, but it just donates it to the network, or something like that. Like just, but we have this for CoinJoin, we have a collateral system like this. The actual self-custodial staking protocol works like this, where if you do something that's malicious, then it gets reported, put on the blockchain, and the money is lost.
Okay.
Let's read this comment by one time. Sam suggested the idea that users can flag objectionable content hosted on Evo, and there would be an AI to analyze it and recommend which content should be removed based on settings voted on by the MNOs. Yeah, I mean,
you'd have to run that AI yourself.
Our AI overlords this warmly?
Yeah, because I don't agree with the AI, because that's like a magic wand. You have to specify what kind of technology. Are you talking about machine learning? Are you talking about LLM? Like, what are you talking
and this
about?
This could have been just some idea that was thrown out. Who knows?
Let's accept it as just an idea that's thrown, some sort of heuristic. I feel much more comfortable saying heuristic, because we know that's guaranteed. Because AI is always based on randomness and statistics, which means, and then bias that's fed into the system. So unless we were running the AI on the masternodes, I wouldn't trust the AI, because the AI is just whoever owns the AI, their bias is going to influence it. But let's say heuristics. Yes, you could apply a set of heuristics that have a guaranteed outcome. Yes, 100% agree with that.
So we are over an hour at this point, and we've really just scratched the surface of this topic.
That's not allowed. We have to end now.
No. I'm just saying, like AJ, you and I, we had a long discussion about this before we even got on here a few days ago, and we didn't get into the technical details at all in this show here. So this might be part of a little bit of a series. If people are interested in this concept in general, please give us your feedback. Is this something that we should pursue in the incubator? We don't have a concept out for it, either even submitted, let alone accepted. But it is something that I think is a great idea to build demand for Dash. There is a huge market for this. We already know this because I have researched the front end web development and hosting and framework space quite a bit in the past couple of years, and the pattern that I've noticed is that every single web framework, like JavaScript framework, where how you write your JavaScript and then compile that and then make that into a website, every single one of these, and there are tons of them, like Next.js or Svelte and Solid and Angular, and pretty much every one of these frameworks, the way that they monetize and support themselves is that they, in addition to the open source framework that they're creating, they spin up a paid service for web hosting. Like, oh, you are writing you're writing a web page using Solid, use our web hosting service as well. We give you this web framework as an open source, gift to you, but please, Mr. User of our open source free software, please use our hosting service to host your website while you're at it. And this is how pretty much every SaaS JavaScript framework system works. And there are tons of them. So I know that there's a big market for this. And I also think that there would be an even bigger market for the convenience added by just saying, hey, it's really easy to pay us because you can just pay us in cryptocurrency, and you can get your website hosted with the click of a button and a payment from your wallet. That's really simple. So I think that there's just a really good product market fit here if we do it right.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of potential options. I often spout, well, everybody knows this, I say too much, right? I talked about a lot of edge cases. I talked about a lot of options. This can be a very streamlined experience. I'm just floating. Here are concerns. Here are ideas. Here are things. I'm thinking out loud. But yes, we can absolutely have a very streamlined experience of, here's a QR code, upload some content. This is the terms of the joint Dash masternodes. This is what you can expect. Also, there's some risk because a server may be malicious. If that happens, it can get POSI banned. Well, people aren't going to read all that, but we can have a very simple, these are the constraints that we've decided on for this version of this. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's nothing that would prevent masternodes from running similar services. I mean, people within the Dash community could fork what we created, tweak the parameters, tweak the levers on it, and then publish another version that's perhaps more successful than the choices that we made or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if this sounds like something that you would like to see the incubator pursue, or if you would like to get involved with it yourself, should it become an actual concept, you have Rion and or AJ's contact information in the description section below, and we'll say goodbye now.
Yeah. One last thing. Sorry. I know we're closing up. I just wanted to, I'm going to drop a link here to a video. I posted it in the public comments. So hopefully that shows up, and then maybe we can put it in the video description as well.
Okay.
This is the fourth part of a blockchain debate series that AJ and I had with several other people, maybe a year or two ago. And this fourth part, we talk about the technical, we go into more technical details about how the internet is structured and what kind of pain points, or not pain points, but what kind of censorship points there are. And so we talk about all that stuff. So that might be a good complementary video to watch if you want to get more into the weeds of how websites are served and works and that kind of stuff. So I'll just post that there for anybody who's interested. And we also talked about kind of this concept back then of providing services by the masternodes in that episode. So yeah, with that, I guess I will sign us out again. So thanks guys for joining this call, and we will talk to you later.
Oh wait, I have one more thing.
Yeah.
Goodbye.